GHOSTDANCERS hosh, hachi ayupanchi, sahochi fukat, Minko Clifton. That means GHOSTDANCERS welcomes you. GHOSTDANCERS hosh, hachi ayupanchi, sahochi fukat. My name is Chief Clifton, Minko Clifton. Omishki, listen up. That means a lot of times when you give us a speech or a talk or you're in council and you're about to say something that's important, you say Omishki, it means listen up. Ome means all right or hey or what have you. And Omishki is like a superlative. That means hey, listen up. I'm about to say something. Okay, today I want to talk a little about some of the Choctaw legends and how they interface with the ancient Toltecs, and then the Toltecs, how they interface with the ancient Egyptians. I'm carrying on in that vein a little bit what I talked about yesterday, and specifically I wanted to say something about Ofi Tokpi, Ofi Aishtolo, the miracle white dog, who after this great cataclysm, the Proto-Choctaws and Chickasaws, people of the Southeast Ceremonial Complex, found themselves on a beach, washed up on a beach, and then there's this high mountain, and the remnants of the people, they were led by this man named Hatakni, the first man, and the firstborn man, and these hero twins. Most of these ancient primordial traditions have hero twins. And our legends, it's Choctaw and Chickasaw, these two twin brothers. The Mayans had Hunahpu and Xbalanque. The ancient Egyptians had Osiris and Set. And there were a lot of ancient twins that there's supposed to be within each person a twin soul that you have that can actually draw you to information in a separate reality. Some people have their twin, actually a physical twin, born on the planet. The word for twin in Choctaw is Hayop, and the word for lake is Hayup. It's very close to the word for this water area. And there's one of the leading clans that I'm connected with, by the way, from the Choctaws, called the Hayup Tukalo, or the Two Lakes clan, because there was a water source reified on the earth, and it was connected to an ancient twin water source in the heavens, which is usually sometimes considered to be the moon. In the Native American church, that's why we use the moon and the moon altar to launch us into these hyperdimensional realities. So, in any case, these people were washed up on the shore, and they were told by Ababanili, he who sits above, this ancient spirit who used to watch over this planet. It's called Ababanili, he who sits above. And Ababanili came to the tribe, and he gave them they said to climb this high spear, this mountain, this peak, this mountain. They climbed, Hatakni climbed this mountain, and he found this long staff there called the Itifabusa. And he brought down the staff from the mountain, and Ababanili said, when you plant the staff, I will point in the direction that you're supposed to migrate in every morning. At night when you go to bed, to sleep, you stick it straight in the ground, and then I'll point it in the direction. Well, that night when they stuck it in the ground, it leaned in a certain direction, but something very sacred appeared. A sacred white dog appeared and slept at the base of the staff. Ofitoki is called. And every morning when they woke up, the white dog would wake up and start a meandering course, and people would follow it. They followed him for months and days and years across the land. Finally, they got to this great river, which is the Mississippi, the Mississippi, the beyond age, the river beyond age. And they crossed this river, and on the other side, there was a disagreement between the Chickasaws and the Choctaws, and Chickasaw thought that they should go on. They went north, and the Choctaws went south. And Ofi led the Choctaws to the sacred mound that the Choctaws have today in Mississippi, but they're not sure whether that's the specific one or it's one of these other mounds along the Mississippi Valley, but it's called Nanihuaya. And as the legend goes, at the base of that, he gave his life, and at the base of that staff, the Idifabusa, where it stood straight up, Ofi passed away. And as he did so, his spirit opened up this corridor to the Ofi Hasimbish, this Hinahanta, this bright path, which is the Milky Way galaxy. And it allowed the spirits of man, like fish swimming in a stream, to swim up into this starry realm, if you live a righteous life and are in harmony with the animal nations, and especially the canine nations. So it's very important to be in harmony and deeply respectful of these canine nations. Now, the Choctaws were not the only ones that had at the corridor to this land, this gateway to the dead. In Teotihuacan, there is a city of the pyramids that the ancient Nanahualca Mayas, or Huastecs, built. And they have a Via de los Muertos that goes north-south, and at the southern end, there's this temple of Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent. At the northern end is a pyramid of the moon. And then off to about halfway up the Via de los Muertos on your right-hand side to the east, if you're going north, is the Pyramid of the Sun. And I stayed there for about 2 weeks in San Juan de Teotihuacan, which is a village just outside of the city of the pyramids. And I used to run that Via de los Muertos every day, and just for my exercise. And it's high altitude. It's about 6,000 feet. So you have to kind of acclimate yourself to it. And climbing those steps of the Pyramid of the Sun, that's a real workout, because there are many steps, and each of these numerations in the steps, and the Pyramid of the Sun and Moon, they all have meanings. They all have iconographical meanings. In a similar vein, in ancient Egypt, there's a way of the dead from the temple of the Sphinx to the pyramids. And the Sphinx, according to these authors, some people believe that the head of the Sphinx was destroyed and then remade in the head of a man. They think the Sphinx, some believe that the Sphinx was originally Anubis, the head of the jackal, or the canine spirit of Anubis that guarded the way of the dead in ancient Egypt as well. So there's a similar ideology and iconography in all of these things. Well, one of the most important astrological scenarios that happen in the sky is an eclipse. We used to watch for eclipses. Now, one of the things I found when I was in Teotihuacan is painted on the wall, the iconography for an eclipse is a black squirrel devouring this globe, this luminous globe, which is the sun. And that's the iconography for a solar eclipse. And that was one of the things that really struck me, to know that the Choctaws and the Southeast Ceremonial Complex in general and the Teotihuacanos are the same people, or at least have the same cultural traditions, because in Choctaw, that's also the iconography or the symbol for an eclipse. It's a black squirrel eating up the sun. It's Fanilusa Hut Huchiapa. That's what they say in Choctaw. Fanilusa is a black squirrel. Hut is the nominative case, and Hoshi is the luminary or sun. It can be either the sun or the moon. Hashnakanya is the luminary that travels by night. That's usually the moon. And Hoshi is the sun, and then Appa means to devour or eat up. So you say Fani Lutsahat Hoshi Appa to signify a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, as the case may be. But in any case, this canine spirit is very important in our ancient iconography and our ancient traditions as an opener or corridor or gateway to assist man to traverse into these higher dimensional realms. So when I do a ceremony, that's a little different from what I do. I always have a canine, a sacred canine that I have a very close relationship as a guardian and guide into these outer dimensional realms. I've always had a kindred with mastiffs. So because they have supposedly, according to geneticists, they have a very ancient genetics as canines go. So my first mastiff was an English mastiff, and he was huge. He got to be about 235 pounds. And when he passed away, we got CHOCTAW, our Neapolitan mastiff. And my wife and I went and rescued him, and we raised him. He became really attached to us, and he was about 215 pounds. He was both of my mastiffs are really big boys. And then when he passed away, we were devastated. We were lost. And to tell a little story, personal story, he came to us in a vision, CHOCTAW, and he told us about this other mastiff that needed our help, and that he was attached to. And this is our current mastiff, Zanoni. But what happened was, a few hours after that, this mastiff rescue called us that they knew that CHOCTAW passed away. And they said there was this little mastiff, he was a little bull mastiff, that had been used in dog fights. It was really horrible. And they said he was essentially found dead in the snow. And they had taken him into the mastiff rescue, and he had shown some signs of life, but they thought he wasn't going to survive. So they said, would we come and see what we could do? Because they knew we had a magical kind of a relationship with the mastiffs. So, of course, we went and we got him. And we named him Zanoni, which is an ancient Chaldean word that means luminous being. He was not in good shape. So what we did was we put him in his own little room and shielded him. And he obviously was very terrified as well. So we slowly earned his trust. And what I did was we surrounded him with crystals, and we would pray over him every morning and every evening. And we would take, he couldn't eat solid food. So what I got milk and put colostrum in it, because he had never been nourished properly. So I fed him by hand colostrum and milk, and slowly he started to revive. And within a month, he had life in him, a lot of life. And so we've formed this extremely close bond with him, based upon this vision from CHOCTAW about his needing our assistance and we needing his assistance. And he came into our lives to guide us and guard us. And when I do a ceremony, he's a very, very important part of that ceremony, because he guides me into the outer gateways. He acts as a guide. When you go into a lot of times into these visions, if you go into a deep vision, there's different realms that you can enter, and sometimes you can get lost in these realms if you don't know, if you don't have a guide to or a map or a guide to follow. So that's why it's important to keep in harmony with the animal nations, the canine nations, the bison, the mustangs, the horses, all these thunder beings, because they have abilities beyond human. Humans have certain abilities that the animal nations don't have, and vice versa, and they can act as corridors or gateways to help humans that sometimes don't have the same abilities that they do. So unfortunately, the spirit of the animal has been greatly disrespected. And my wife and I will not participate in any disrespect for the spirit of the animal or the spirit of this planet. So that's why one of the reasons that we have dedicated ourselves to helping animals whenever we can. And we're also vegans because we're not going to participate in the torture of animals and ingesting that into our system for spiritual, moral, and health reasons. So I wanted to talk a little bit about someone asked me the other day about our astrological and our astronomic native ideologies and how to I would give, it was someone who knew a little about my Indian Masonic background. And so what happened was there was when I was in 2004, I think I mentioned that I was came from this Indian Masonic background, and I was raised by the Oklahoma Indian Degree Team in Oklahoma. It's an Indian group. I was raised in Oklahoma as a Master Mason. And when I returned to California, I entered a lodge in California. I joined a lodge, and I progressed up to the officerial positions. I finally became Master of the Lodge in 2004. As a matter of fact, the year I was Master of the Lodge in 2004, they made this, in order to run a lodge, one of the things you use the gavel. It's one of the symbols of the Master who orders and runs the lodge. And as a commemoration or memento of my being Master in 2004, the lodge made this gavel for me, this native gavel, knowing that I was, an Indian Mason. So they presented me with this gavel, and it's a beautiful piece, and I cherish it. So during the course of my tenure as the Master, you're allowed certain leeway about what you do in the lodge and how you conduct the lodge business and what have you. One of the things that I noticed is our lodge, in general, Masonic lodges haven't been attracting a lot of new members. So they have a lot of old members, and a lot of these older lodges are dying. I was the Master of Sunset 369 in Santa Monica in 2004. I'm leading up to something that's fine. I'm giving you this sort of background. So in 2004, I started giving a series of lectures. A lot of it was based upon Indian Masonry and things that were happening or would happen. And one of the lectures I gave, in order to stimulate interest in newer members in our Masonic lodge, and indeed it did, and it grew back to health, and the line grew back to health, and what have you. So in any case, I gave a lecture in 2004. There was as I mentioned yesterday, one of the principal calendars, the most important calendars we use, is the 584-day Venus calendar. We use it in the Southeast Ceremonial Complex. The Mayans used it. All the ancient traditions knew about this Venus cycle. It's a 584-day cycle from the heliacal rising of Venus to the next heliacal rising of Venus. It takes 584 days. This iconographically, it's told in the ancient books of the Mayans from Mexico, from Chiapas, and the Popol Vuh. It's talked about, and it recounts this cycle. There's four basic phases to Venus. There's the morning star phase, the evening star phase, the phase when it's going from evening star to morning star, which takes about 8 days. And then there's a 93-day phase when it's going from morning star to evening star. And then the morning and evening star phases are longer phases. But the whole cycle is 584 days. So 5 of these cycles, they position in the heavens a 5-pointed star, like a pentagram. And 5 of these 584-day cycles is equivalent to 8 Earth years. So the whole 5 cycles, where it comes back to the beginning of the point where it started, is an 8-year cycle. Now, every 104 years, because there's a declinational difference in where Venus is, and it goes back and forth in this declination. And it takes 104 years for it to circulate back where it crosses directly over the sun. So every 104 years, there's a astronomical situation that takes place called the transit of Venus, and that transit of Venus occurred. In twin groups that occur 8 years apart. So every 104 years. So when this occurred, it occurred in 2004, and then again in 2012. Then it won't occur again for another 104 years. But that's why I gave this lecture on the Venus prophecies back then, and a lot of this information on Venus that Native Americans had was recovered, and they thought they thought it had been lost. It was written down by the Mayans in these books called codices, and there was one codex that had the Venus calendar in it. It was called the Dresden Codex, and most of these codices were systematically destroyed by the church, the Roman Catholic Church, because they were trying to repress and genocide and ethnocide indigenous peoples. So they took a few of them. They took them back to libraries, and they got into certain libraries of certain kings of Spain, who were the Habsburgs, and then this one went into Austria and finally went into Germany. It was called the Dresden Codex. And they thought it had been lost because during World War II there was a huge bombing of Dresden, but there was I forget his name. There was some anthropologist in Germany who was able to find this Dresden Codex again in the rubbish, and it was relatively undamaged. And it talks about this 584-day cycle and how it works. So I studied that for a while, and then I started coming to my own conclusions about it. Why was it that 2012, if you remember back 8 years ago, was such an important point in the Mayan calendar? Well, they said, well, it was because it went into this the sun, the winter solstice sun, was at the point of the dark rift of the Milky Way. But that rift is huge, so it could have been a lot of years, like 100 years, different years that could have happened. But I contend it was because of the Venus calendar, this transit of Venus in 2012. So this 8-year cycle, the cycle after the 2012 started a new cycle, and it went through a period called the dark years of Venus is what it's called. And what happened was, in this dark years of Venus, these 8 years, it would culminate in 2020. Now, interestingly enough, this particular Venus cycle, this retrograde Venus cycle that culminates in the rising of Venus at the morning star, has a particular strong correlation with the chart of the United States of July 4th, 1776, because that particular day, Mars was at that exact point where Venus went retrograde at 21 Gemini. So it sort of brought to the fore a lot of dissension, civil dissension, disease, famine, what have you. And so in 2004, I said it was a very important point to watch. And those who attended my lectures may remember this. And indeed, in March, June, July, and August, when this is happening, this Venus cycle is happening, we've had a lot of internal dissension in the United States with civil unrest, with disease, the COVID-19, the famines that have caused by it, the economic problems that it's precipitated. So I think this has to do with this Venus cycle. There's also another group of prophecies called the Chilimbalim, the Jaguar prophets. The Choctaws had 3 different types of prophets. They had the Onsi Chito HOPI, which is the Great Eagle prophecies, the Sinti HOPI, which are the serpent prophecies, and Koichito HOPI, which are the Jaguar prophecies. So there's 3 different types of prophecies, and they had those in the Eagle prophecies and the Jaguar prophecies. The Jaguar prophecies are some of the most arcane because they're the Jaguar prophecies, or the mysterious prophecies of the night. And there was in Mayan, the term for Jaguar prophet is Chilimbalim. And there was one particular city where these prophecies were kept in Chumayel. It's close to Mayapan. It's in Yucatan. And the Chilimbalim of Chumayel recounts that in 2012, each period is a 20-year period called a Katun. So from 2012 to 2032 is the 4th Katun. It's supposed to be a very turbulent time, the time of the return of the plumed serpent. Now, it takes about 256 years for this cycle to complete itself. And I think I mentioned that 256 periods ago was 1519 when Cortez came to the Aztecs. And then one 256-year period was when the French and Indian War repressed the indigenous people, the red men here in the United States and Canada. So now we've come a full cycle where we've entered that Katun again. And this is the 4th Katun of the Jaguar prophets, the Chilimbalim of Chumayel, the Koichito HOPI. So all of these things have precedence, but you have to sort of correlate the 260-day calendar with the 584-day calendar to understand how it works. It works like a wheel within a wheel. And these things unfold in time, and there's a coordination to how all these things work. Now, why the red race has been so repressed in this knowledge, that's a story in and of itself. But that will take us a far afield into a different direction. And today I just wanted to mention those 2 prophecies, and also how the white dog, the canine spirit, is very important to the people of the Southeast Ceremonial Complex, the Washtec, Teotihuacanos, and Toltecs of Mesoamerica, and the ancient Egyptians. And the ancient Egyptians called this watcher or guardian Anubis. He was this watcher or guardian that guarded this land, this gateway to the land of the dead. The Choctaws call him Ofitokpi, and I think the Nahuatl term is Iscuintli. But so in any case, there's these prophecies and these calendrical systems. I will say that there does seem to be something coming that I have seen in my visions and looking at studying these stellar positions and what have you. And I would say a halcyon day, the next halcyon day that I would look for would be October 16th. October 16th is in the 260-day calendar is an important day. And also this winter solstice, on the winter solstice, there's a grand conjunction, which happens only once every 20 years, only once in a cartoon. It's the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter. And the ancient peoples of Mesoamerica used to build stelae. They used to build these stone stelae. They used to put them up at the time of these great conjunctions because they were they had to do with the rulership of these cartoons. Well, this particular one is going to happen at exactly 0 degrees Aquarius. And it's going to happen on the winter solstice. So it's a very prescient cartoon. So that said, those are the next 2 halcyon periods that I would say need to be watched for. As far as 2012 is concerned, dramatic things have happened since 2012. So a lot of people say, well, nothing happened then. Dramatic things have happened since then. The world has dramatically changed. It's changed spiritually, especially spiritually. It's changed economically, and it's changed technologically. In many cases, it's, I think, for the worse. Unfortunately, I think the exploitation of the earth and the respect for the spirit of the earth has gotten out of control. I think that there's 2 main problems on the planet. It's identity crisis. Because of colonialism, most people have a huge identity crisis now. And because of that identity crisis, that's led to the ego out of control. The ego is out of control, which has caused a 3rd crisis, which is schizophrenia, or mass schizophrenia, which is, there was an analytic psychologist who also studied some Native American traditions named Carl Jung. And at the end of his life in 1962, he said he feared for humanity because he saw this period of schizophrenia coming on. And I kind of have to agree with that. I think the ego is out of control. That's the main problem with the planet right now. Because they don't see the harmony and the unity of the planet. They see the ego as being the most important thing. I'm the most important thing in the universe. I have the right to declare you subhuman and exterminate you, repress you, what have you. My most important thing is to portray myself as having certain entitlements or rights that nobody else has. And that's really basically what colonialism is based upon. Why does one people have the right to go and say that you should be exterminated, you should be genocided, and I have the right to confiscate your resources when you're living in harmony and balance for thousands of years? I have the right to go and confiscate your resources and cause this exploitation and imbalance. Well, there was certain elitist hierarchies that were put in place, and they feel they have certain entitlements. As a matter of fact, the aristocracies in Europe even call themselves, we're the entitled ones. We're entitled to, we have these titles of aristocracy. But in Native American traditions, there is no such entitlements. The spirit of the earth is supreme. And these animal nations have an equitable right to life. So we have a different approach. That's why our societies are structured as matrilineal clan systems. It's very hard to establish a male-dominated hierarchical dynasty in a matrilineal clan system, especially if it's exogamous, because your father has to marry a different clan from his own. By the way, these clan systems also wove all different tribes together. If you're, let's say, let's say, the Turtle Clan, the Luxi Iksa, it's called in Choctaw, then you could go to any other tribe, and you could go to that tribe's clan, Turtle Clan, and they would have to feed you and nurture you. Let's say you were lost in another tribal territory. They would have to protect you, feed you, and nurture you. That clan protected you. It was like your mother clan. Your father clan was a sub-clan, but your primary clan was your mother clan. All the women in that clan were your ishki, your mothers. The women in your father's clan are called hokni. So they were a sub-clan. They had a relationship to you, but they didn't have the mother relationship with the ishki. So in any case, these are just certain introductions that I will get into more about how the clan system worked, why I felt it was a more valid system that tied you in harmony to the planet, and why this male-dominated hierarchy of colonialism and capitalist communism, and not fascism, these economic structures that descended from these postmodernist colonial structures, caused disharmony on the planet. Now, that's my own personal opinion. I hope to continue these talks and put out more teachings. And for now, Naya Hoshish Noeshke, may you walk in peace. Yakoke, thank you.